Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly fantastic, incredibly practical framework from chapter 15 of Fred Clements' book, 30 Coaching Tools and Approaches That Actually Work. We aren't getting bogged down in academic theory here. We're talking about a real working toolkit for actual conversations that drive real change. If you're a manager, a leader, or a coach, you already know how tricky workplace conversations can get. So we're going to dive right into how you can navigate those moments with total clarity. Let's start with a problem we see all the time. Imagine you're sitting across from one of your most talented team members. You know they have massive potential, but they look right at you and say, "I just lack confidence." What do? How do you help someone move forward when they're completely paralyzed by uncertainty? Our gut instinct is usually to try and fix their confidence directly, right? Maybe give them a quick pep talk.
But as we're going to see, that might actually be the exact wrong approach. You see, people often believe they inherently lack confidence. They treat it like it's a fixed personal trait, kind of like their eye color. But in reality, what they're usually experiencing is just the very normal, albeit uncomfortable process of trying to do something they haven't fully mastered yet. As the author points out, referencing Paul McKenna's work, you don't need confidence for things you already know how to do. I mean, you don't need to hype yourself up to make a piece of toast. Confidence is entirely situational. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the confidence illusion. Then we'll be unpacking the 4 stages, followed by Kolb's learning cycle, coaching the stages, common mistakes to avoid, and finally, real change in practice. To really reframe this whole narrative around confidence, we have to look closely at how humans actually learn new skills.
And it's so cool to see how perfectly these two models map the human learning experience together. This brilliant diagram from the book illustrates our 2 core tools working in tandem. On the left, we've got the conscious competence model, that 4-stage pyramid showing how we move from unconscious incompetence at the bottom all the way to unconscious competence at the top. And on the right, that's Kolb's learning cycle. It's the continuous engine of experiencing, reflecting, conceptualizing, and experimenting. Together, they don't just show where someone is stuck, they show us exactly how to get them unstuck. Section 2, unpacking the 4 stages from unaware to automatic to properly diagnose exactly where your coachee or team member is sitting right now. We have to start at the very base of that pyramid, stage 1, unconscious incompetence. Now at this stage, the person is completely unaware of their own skill gap. They literally do not know what they don't know. They might look at a complex task and think, "Oh yeah, that's easy," simply because they haven't actually tried to do it properly yet. They don't know what good looks like, so they aren't aware of their own limitations in this specific area. But then reality hits and we enter stage 2, conscious incompetence. And listen, this stage is usually incredibly uncomfortable. Suddenly, the person sees their own clumsiness. The gap between where they are and where they want to be becomes painfully obvious. The book uses a really fantastic analogy here. Think of a learner driver. They're hyper aware that they're trying to check the mirrors, use the signal, shift gears, balance the clutch, and watch their speed all at the exact same time. It feels overwhelming, and this is the precise moment they sit in your office and say, "I have no confidence." Now, if they stick with it and keep practicing, they reach stage 3, conscious competence. Here, your coachee can actually perform the skill effectively, but it requires heavy, deliberate concentration. They can do it, but they really have to think about it. If they're prepping for a big interview, for example, they can answer the questions clearly using a solid structure, but they're still actively managing their nerves and focusing really hard on their delivery. Finally, they arrive at the top. Stage 4, unconscious competence. At this point, the skill has become completely natural and integrated. They don't have to think about every single little step anymore. Just like an experienced driver who gets home and barely remembers the gear changes on the commute. The performance is completely automatic, and here is the massive revelation. This automatic mastery is the absolute exact moment they finally recognize themselves as feeling confident. Okay, so we know the stages, but why does Kolb's learning cycle matter here? How do we actually push someone from that painful awareness in stage 2 up to the automatic ease of stage 4? Well, Kolb's cycle is the essential engine that does it. When someone's stuck in conscious incompetence, they feel totally frozen. But Kolb says learning happens by doing. First, you have a concrete experience. You just try the thing. Then reflective observation. You step back and review what actually happened. Next, abstract conceptualization, making sense of it and grabbing the core lesson. And finally, active experimentation, trying it again in a new or adjusted way. That continuous practical loop is what physically pulls a person up the pyramid. Section 4, Coaching the Stages, Practical Questions for Managers. So how do we use this in a practical one-to-one setting to actually facilitate real change? It's all about asking the right questions at the exact right time. In the early stages, your whole goal is to gently build their awareness and normalize the struggle. If they're completely unaware, try asking, what feedback have you received? Or what might someone more experienced notice? But when they hit that painful conscious incompetence phase, you pivot. You ask, what feels difficult at the moment? Or what support do you need at this stage? You're showing them that feeling clumsy isn't failing. It's just learning then. As they start moving into conscious competence and beyond, your questions should shift to help them reflect on their growing mastery. Ask them, what can you do now that you couldn't do before? And I absolutely love this technique from the book. Remind them they've successfully done this before. Ask them to think about a time a brand new skill became completely natural to them over time, like cooking, driving, or their very first day at a previous job. You're helping them realize they've successfully gone from struggle to ease countless times in their life. Section 5, Common Mistakes to Avoid, Pitfalls in the Toolkit. As a manager or coach, there are definitely a few traps you need to dodge here. The most critical mistake, letting your coachee or yourself interpret conscious incompetence as failure. It is not failure, it is awareness. Another huge trap is assuming confidence has to come before action. So many people think they need to feel confident before they do the task. But this model proves the exact opposite. Confidence actually grows through action and practice. It's the result of the cycle, not the prerequisite for it. And remember, don't use this model just to slap a static label on someone. Use it as a dynamic map to guide them forward. Section 6, Real Change in Practice, the interview example. Let's ground this with a short practical example from the text to see how this builds a compelling path forward. Imagine someone is prepping for a massive interview. They're incredibly nervous and tell you they have zero confidence. Using this toolkit, the coach reframes those nerves. Those nerves simply highlight that they're in conscious incompetence. They finally see the gap. So you fire up Kolb's cycle. Step 1. You have them practice and answer out loud. That's the concrete experience. Step 2, you ask them to identify what needs improving, reflective observation. Step 3, they adjust and try again, steadily building their conscious confidence. They aren't failing at all. They are actively climbing the pyramid. So to answer our opening hook, what do you do when a talented team member lacks confidence? You don't need to fix them. You don't need to give them an empty pep talk about how great they are. You simply use these frameworks to show them they aren't failing. They're just learning. You help them understand that discomfort is a totally necessary, entirely normal stage of the process. That initial painful awareness, it is actually the doorway to their eventual mastery. Before we go, I want you to think about your own team for a second. Who is sitting in the discomfort of conscious incompetence right now, secretly waiting for you to help them reframe it? I hope this toolkit approach gives you exactly what you need for that next real conversation. It truly is a game changer for people development. For more information, head over to ClementsConsultancy.com to buy a discounted PDF copy of the book, or head over to Amazon for the ebook or printed version.